Hey everyone, welcome into Patterns Tell Stories. I'm your host Klaus, and today we're going to be talking about the NASA UAP report, the new Tom DeLonge movie Monsters of California, and a few updates on the UAP Disclosure Act that's going through the Senate right now. With me today is my co-host Garrett. How's it going, dude?
Good, man. I'm glad we're back at it. It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a minute. Had some stuff going on, but I'm glad we could finally get back to it. Anything you want to go into first? I guess we should talk about the NASA report. It was pretty much everything I expected, at least. It, had the very basics. It wasn't going to be, anything with actual videos or they were basically trying to form some sort of plan and take what NASA had already that was unclassified and form a roadmap of how to study UAP, like what data they would need. And it's kind of like a meme at this point where they're always like, we need more data. We need more data to actually study this thing. And it's been years of this shit. And so it was kind of frustrating for a lot of people who have been following this. It's like, okay, yeah, we know we need more data, but what data do you have? Kind of that's like my frustration with the whole thing. It was also kind of annoying how Bill Nelson reacted to the questions about David Grush. I think it was from James Fox, the filmmaker who made The Phenomenon, which was an awesome movie. Go check it out if you haven't. But it was it was a bit disappointing where he essentially said he wanted more evidence, which is fine. But the kind of dismissive tone he came to it with, and basically saying he only knew about David Grush's claims from what he saw on the evening news, which I guess is weird, or I don't know. I guess you can't really blame him. But it seems kind of relevant to his job. You'd think. I fucking NASA head, but what are your thoughts?
As I've said in previous podcasts we've done, I don't expect a whole lot of transparency from NASA. The problem I have right now is that NASA seems to be pretending like they don't have any classified information at all, which is complete baloney. I know it's not that their mission to look for or to study UFOs, but like the idea that Nelson had nothing to say about Dave Grush is bizarre. Like how is there any excuse for that whatsoever when we have like guys like Marco Rubio in the Senate Intelligence Committee saying that this is a topic that is like interesting enough for him to spend time on,
Well, the bottom line is that like there was a UFO hearing in Congress like a month ago.
Right.
And this is all right, let's call it UAP. There was a UAP hearing in Congress a month ago where crazy shit was said under oath by 3 credible witnesses. And the NASA director took it upon himself to answer questions at a NASA UAP briefing. And he didn't think to watch the hearing. Like he didn't have any interest in knowing he was going to go before the world, essentially, during this briefing or whatever the fuck you want to call it. And he had nothing to say about Grush's claims besides, I saw it on the evening news. It's just kind of bizarre. I mean, no one underneath you watched it. No one could brief you on it. That's the best you got is you watched it on the fucking news. That's just weird to me too. And Bill Nelson has seemed pretty open-minded to this stuff in the past. He said, it was interesting when he answered James Fox. He was like, I think he said like, I'm setting the table for you when I say I believe that there's intelligent life out there. Just the whole thing with Grush is so weird. People don't want to fucking touch this thing, and they act so weird when it's brought up because I don't know. They're not saying he's lying. That's the interesting thing, but they really, really appear to not want to talk about it. That's the sense I get.
Yeah, that's a good point. That none of these people that have these types of reactions call him a liar. They just like sort of distance themselves from it and act ignorant about the claims he's made. Nobody's ever said this guy's full of shit. Dave Grush was much more down when he was talking to Jesse Michaels.
Yeah, that was good.
It was a great interview. And it sounded like Grush was very confident in the information he had and was like pretty disappointed that it wasn't being followed up on properly. And I'm interested to see how this plays going forward.
I don't know if you saw like the John Greenwald redactions, or like they basically got what looked like hypothetical questions for the DOPSA review. It looked like he submitted Grush submitted for his DOPSA review, I guess, hypothetical questions that someone, I guess in this case Ross Coulthart, was going to ask him. I guess all the answers were redacted due to privacy concerns. And then John Greenwald, of course, tries to spin it as, what is Grush hiding, when it's the fucking DOD who's doing these redactions. And it's just so weird to me. And he's like, why doesn't Grush release this? And it's like, all right, first of all, were you not listening when this guy said he was fucking like retaliated against and like threatened and all this shit? Maybe he doesn't want to release that stuff because there's stuff under there that he didn't talk about for a reason. Maybe he was threatened after, he submitted that stuff and he decided not to talk about some of it. So maybe that's why he's not doing it. And also, like, he doesn't fucking owe you anything. So he's, it's a first draft. And I made the point where I'm saying, like, I don't put my first drafts of my articles like out in the world for people to see, because like that's, I want to edit it. I want to put out there like the most correct information possible. So I don't know. Maybe he should release it. At this point, I don't really care. I guess he should, but like, whatever. I think it's pointless to argue over. And if he doesn't want to, I don't think that like takes anything away from what he said. But yeah, that whole thing was bizarre to me.
Well, yeah, he's already stuck his neck out a whole lot. It sounds like they go through the proper channel to make sure they can say the few breadcrumbs they can say. Yeah. And then past that, it's pretty much just like their hands are tied until more legislation can protect them. Or I don't know. I don't really know how this can unfold, and it's interesting to see the like chess match being played, or seemingly being played, and all the bizarre stories we're hearing about, and all the like. I think we were talking about it before, how like right as the Grush interview with Coulthart dropped, that we got that bizarre story about the alien in Las Vegas in someone's backyard. And it's like almost so like convenient that like during the news of Grush, we also got the story of that. And guess what else we got? We got some dug up little mummy skeletons that we're gonna fucking wheel out. And it's gonna make whatever else is in the news look stupid. Yeah,
like the NASA report, like the actual legitimate. And that's the thing too, is like, as much as like we can shit on the NASA report and say they're just never a straight answer again, it does legitimize the topic. Like the more often that this is in the news, like, outside of the US, I mean, mostly when I say this, is that when it's in the news and it's NASA, the most respected space agency in the world, pretty much, I would assume, it lends credence to that this subject is credible in the eyes of the U.S. government. And I think it, if there are other organizations or academics or more transparent governments, I guess, that want to study this or need permission to study this, I think the more often this topic is broached in the news, when it has to do with NASA and official government agencies like that, I think it's a good thing. As much as we hate to see the same shit over and over again, there's still that 99% of the world who doesn't give a fuck about this, and pretty much everything the DoD's been hiding. Like just 1% of that releasing it like would help move this forward. And I don't know. I think there's definitely a reluctance to move too fast. I think you've said that a lot in the past, and I think that's pretty dead on.
Yeah, dude, think about it. Like they're talking about UAP, regardless of how dismissive they are or any of that, which I don't regard them as that dismissive if they're willing to hold a hearing
Right.
and like appoint some, I don't even know what they called it, an ambassador, commissioner or something, like someone who's going to like oversee this topic specifically. I think that's pretty cool. Just the fact that they're talking about UAP, but in general, like how often could you say in the past 10 years that NASA has anything to say about that topic? I could count on one hand, you know? So like I think that it is progress, but it's it still has a long ways to go because I already know that there's like many stories of, and you hear them call into the shows like Art Bell and Linda Howe all the time, or George Knapp, or George Norrie. All these shows have people call in that say that they worked for NASA and that they saw some picture or image and some spook came in and confiscated it. Like everybody's heard a story like that about NASA. And I find it just so bizarre that we're expecting transparency from them. I still maintain what I said in previous podcasts that like I don't think we've gotten a very clear image of I don't know, dude. I'm trying to think of like an intelligent way to put this, but like it doesn't sound, I sound like such a fucking conspiracy theorist.
No, man, it's true. I mean, but this is another thing that I kind of been thinking about lately. Like, what if NASA isn't the most relevant, government agency? What if it's like NOAA, or if these things are coming from the ocean? Like, what if NASA, doesn't know as much as we think they do, and we've just assumed this whole time that they're the ones who have all the answers, when really it's I mean, it makes sense because they're transmedium, and so the space domain, that would kind of seal the deal if we were able to if we were able to have video or sensor data or something that would without a doubt prove that these UAP are in space. Our none of our stuff can go from water to air to space. That would prove it. So I guess that's kind of where people are looking to NASA for the ultimate validation of UFOs. But maybe it's not NASA who are the ones we should be pressing on this. But I mean, I'm sure they have some of the answers, but I don't know. It's just a thought I had.
Something unique about like the United States situation with space is and I think Robert Bigelow pointed this out when he was talking to Jeffrey Mishlove, was that countries like China or Russia, their space programs are like more military, and the United States is unique in that it's like just not a military program, even though its foundations, as we've talked about in earlier podcasts, were like these rocketry guys from our Air Force. It's still like a unique tie into like how we think about these programs. And our government has like a history of having secrecy around this topic. And it makes you wonder, like, how long has it been since we've been to the moon on like an official capacity? It's been like something like over 50 years where we've had like a man walking on the moon. That begs the question, do we just think that like nobody's been to space and walked on the moon?
Yeah. So it's so weird, it's like, I don't know. I just think of Tom's thing where he was at a party and some like defense contractor bigwig came up to him and like whispered in his ear, we've been mining on the moon for 30 years. He's just like, yeah, that's what he said to me. It's just like, okay. Like imagine that. Imagine like, that's a really good point that, all the other superpowers have a more military view of space than we at least put out to the world, publicly as an image. Like we're like super like civilian, research and all that stuff. But like imagine, we've had soldiers or something on the moon for years, and then, we're doing all these experiments, like civilian experiments remotely from Earth, trying to like, is there volcanism? Is there, plate tectonics when there's fucking people like sitting up there? How fucking pissed off would like everyone be if that was the case?
Yeah, dude. I think about that constantly. If someone's up there right now, like, do you think there's one person on the moon right now? Or like when you ask that question, or when I ask that question, do you think we've been there in 50 years? I'm not saying what I think. I'm just asking.
Yeah,
and some of it just makes people smile because like I think that's bullshit, dude. I think that someone has sent something up there. There's no way that in 50 nobody has. Like
I know. And yeah, and the I think it was like the Indian soft landing. They were the third country to accomplish a soft landing on the moon, and like within a day they find there's fucking seismic activity on the moon that we haven't detected since Apollo. Like within a day, it's like, okay, that's really that happened. It's, you expect us to believe that like, yeah, they just miraculously, like their technology is so good that within a day they found seismic activity, and we haven't seen it in 50 years. Really? It's just weird. I don't know.
Yeah, dude.
It just insults our intelligence, kind of. I mean, all right, maybe that's the truth, but prove it. I don't know, man. It's frustrating.
The video of the soft landing of the Japanese like private company a couple months ago, and it has their reactions, is brutal. It's so brutal. Like they failed so bad. It wasn't even manned, but like, I don't know. They're on track for all these Artemis missions, right? Like that's supposed to happen apparently on schedule pretty soon. So I'm curious to see how that goes. But that aside, NASA talking about UAP, I just feel like if you're willing to buy that NASA hasn't been to the moon in 50 plus years and walked a man on the moon, that's fine. But if you're going to tell me that Lockheed Martin or Boeing or like one of these crazy ass companies that has connections to potentially some of like the biggest secrets ever, I think that's crazy to think that they haven't sent somebody. Because like Tom DeLonge said, it was like super resource rich. And I wanted to send you this thing. It was from Brown University. And it was talking about how they this wasn't even a conspiratorial thing. It was just talking about how like when the moon gets impacted, they can determine what different like things are in the sediments, and like what when the moon gets like popped real hard and like a dust cloud forms, they can see like what exactly is in that dust cloud. Part of what they were saying was in it was shit like silver.
Yeah.
And I was like, what the fuck? Silver is in the moon? Like, oh my, yeah, they're definitely going up there. What the fuck? Like,
That's
if silver's
so
up there. Yeah. So I thought that was tight. I'll send that to you.
Yeah. So the UAP thing was, it was whatever. Baby steps, I guess, are positive. But as someone who pays attention to the subject, like every single fucking day, it was a bummer. But what are you going to do? Hopefully next time. So this is the kind of frustrating thing is we get confirmation of, well, not even confirmation, we get acknowledgement of stuff that we already know. And it's stuff that's obvious. And, I guess the difference is it makes it into the news now, and it makes it into, the legitimate area of academia, which is good. But yeah, for most people who pay attention, it's pretty frustrating. And the whole Grush thing with Bill Nelson was yeah, it was kind of annoying. But I don't know. So what else we got? The UAP thing. Oh yeah, you mentioned the fucking mummies.
Oh yeah.
So I guess yeah. So I was watching. I think it was Christina Gomez who had the live stream going on YouTube, and I was watching it, and it was in Spanish. So I'm just kind of like, all right, this is interesting. And I didn't get. I guess the actual like English speakers, like Avi Loeb and Ryan Graves, like you couldn't even hear what they were saying because of the Spanish like translator. So so the whole thing was in Spanish, obviously, because it was in Mexico. But so I'm watching this thing and I'm like, all right, this is kind of cool. And then out of nowhere, they start putting pictures up of these, everyone's seen it by now. It's these alien non-human, I guess that's like the one thing I could read was non-human bodies that everyone knows about it at this point because it's been all over the news. And it's bizarre because it seemed like no one really knew about it who was there. Like Ryan Graves himself called it a stunt. They basically let like all the kind of serious people like Graves and all the UFO specific speakers who were talking about their experiences and flight safety and all the stuff that kind of makes this area legitimate within the frame of academia. But all of a sudden, Jaime, how do you pronounce it? Jaime Musan, him and I guess his the people he was working with, all of a sudden are like, we got a surprise for you. And then they fucking start putting up pictures of the Nazca mummies that they were, basically pushing back in 2017. And I'm just like, what the fuck is this? So I like screenshotted and like, tweeted it. And that shit started like taking off. Everyone's like, what the fuck is this? And I'm like, okay, this is starting to feel weird. It started spreading around Twitter. And I'm like, ugh. And then they had fucking like eggs in their stomachs and like I don't know, dude. It started getting weirder and I'm like, all right, this is getting a little out of control. So I ended up like deleting those tweets and just being like, all right, this doesn't feel right. And then, got called a debunker a million times. And but yeah, it was just bizarre. And you shouldn't ever tweet something out where you don't know where like what the people are actually saying. If it's like some sort of whatever it was, visual like presentation where they had pictures, they were in a fucking like coffin, dude. It was so weird. I don't know. And it turns out, Gaia, which is the streaming service, who they do like I don't know, UFO and like spiritual like shows. I guess Musan has a show on there, and I guess it's like Jimmy Church has a show on there, and it's it's a streaming service that kind of it's basically, I guess they do a lot of ads on YouTube. But yeah, apparently they funded all the research that went into this, like the DNA analysis and all that stuff. And they had also previously funded like a very similar thing with alien mummies back in 2017, except they were with Russian scientists instead of these guys. I guess it was basically like a round two of that, and they hijacked like a very credible situation where they had American pilots coming down who were really pushing for this to be a legitimate issue, and then they just spring out this whole like basically publicity stunt. I mean, Ryan Graves called it a stunt, so I don't know how else you can see it. But yeah, I think it was a real problem, and it made headlines like crazy. Like it was all over the place, and like every single major news outlet took it up, and Yeah, man, I don't know. It was bizarre. And it's so bizarre that this stuff happens like right as other things are kicking off. Like say what you want about the NASA, study. It's a legitimate thing that is, that people are going to take seriously. But for some reason, whenever something like that happens, like Grush's testimony or Grush's, I guess it was his interview when the fucking Vegas alien story popped out of nowhere. It's like something weird like that comes out to like diminish the credibility always happens like at the same exact time as like something that will actually push this subject forward. And I don't know. I don't want to be conspiratorial about it, but it's annoying and it's very consistently it happens consistently. So I don't know what else to think.
If it ain't a conspiracy, it's awfully convenient timing. It's just the idea that like you can make any of this shit seem wacky is like so dumb. At this point, I just think it's dumb. The there's already been so many dope, respectable people that have like talked about UAP to get like the average person pretty excited about like the possibility of what's out there or what like is about to be revealed. That I do you know what they ended up figuring out when they rolled those mummies out? Like, what did the people that believe these things are real believe? Like, what did they say? Because I know that because it seemed super special to them. They rolled them out and were like they like seemed to make it seem really important to them.
Well, dude, there's gonna be a fucking documentary about this in like a year on Gaia. Like that's the thing, is that
Oh god.
like this was like a fucking like publicity stunt for like a series on Gaia. Like I mean that's what it seems like to me anyway. And like I don't know. Apparently the DNA was like inconclusive, which could mean anything, really. Like, Gary Nolan went on Twitter and was like, I feel because he responded to like all my tweets I deleted, and he was like saying all this important shit underneath them, but I had deleted them, so I kind of felt bad. But yeah, he was like basically saying they had like come to him previously, like with this data a year ago, and he had looked at it and been like, ugh. Like, this data is like, first of all, there's so much of it that it would take forever to go through, and I have a job, basically, is what he said. And he was very clear, not to prejudice anything and not to make a determination one way or the other. He's very good like that. He'll say, I don't have the data, so I can't make a decision one way or the other. But I saw this video, which made it seem like bullshit. So that here's the video. And people obviously they get fucking mad. It's like the same exact thing that happened with Greer and the Atacama skeleton. Like they take it out on fucking Gary Nolan just because he's being an honest scientist. It's just like, ugh. But I guess they actually went. I don't know. I stopped paying attention to it because honestly, I don't really give a shit until something actually happens with this stuff because there's a lot more important things to focus on. But yeah, apparently they tested it again, and I don't know. I don't want to spend too much time on this because it's just a headache at this point.
Well, something I like about Gary Nolan is that like he's not afraid to say that the natural explanations for things are still beautiful and interesting,
right?
Because he still learned a lot from that skeleton, and I that's something I really liked about Richard Dawkins too. Was like it's not like a bummer when you say that it wasn't the great juju in the sky that did this thing. It's actually pretty interesting to see like how the natural world functions, and like yeah, Gary Nolan's a breath of fresh air on this topic because like he will say when he doesn't have the evidence for something or when he needs more data, and he'll also say when something's very interesting or compelling. And part of everything that you've explained about like the default mode network and like your basal ganglia and the consistencies in people who have like come close to UFOs, all of those different things, and the skeleton with Greer, all of those different things, he's very level-headed about his approach to them. And I never see him like, he never gives the impression that he's hoping, that it's going to be X, Y, or Z. He seems like he's very much just wants to get down to the data and see like what we can learn about these things.
Yeah, and he also doesn't like judge people. He doesn't
Right.
he doesn't have a predetermined outlook. I mean, he might, he saw the data himself firsthand, so he might have a better idea of what it might mean. You can kind of judge off of what you're looking at, but he didn't have enough data to actually make a determination, and I think he made that pretty clear. And he didn't judge people for what they thought it might be or what they wanted to believe about it. But I think it's always important just to like, and it's also even to discount it. You don't have the data to completely discount it. So he left that open, as he should have, because he's a scientist, and that's it's really important to have people like that who are open-minded, but not going into it wanting it to be something, without the actual evidence for it being that.
Yeah, dude. Who was it who said they were talking about Neil deGrasse Tyson, and I think it was Elizondo on Kurt Jamungal, and he was talking about how in one area Neil deGrasse Tyson was like inquisitive and curious and like interested in our world and willing to like embrace bold stances that we didn't have a ton of evidence for yet. And I think he said that one of the things was string theory. Then when he talks about UAP, the idea that something can exist to us that we can't appear to always observe with our eyes and ears and senses, like the idea that something like that is possible just sounds ridiculous to him.
Yeah.
And it's like he can be super curious in one aspect and then at the same time act like this other thing that is like people, thousands and thousands of, if not millions of people are reporting witnessing these things, and it's yeah, it's just very inconsistent. I wish that there was somebody who would just like try to challenge these people and say that something isn't, I don't know, like the way we were talking about it with Grush, like I don't think anybody's called him that he's lying. It seems like people also just like are nervous about it. Like the whole tone, in my opinion, when he was given his testimony, the undertone was like very intense, because like it seems like the way he was talking about how people have like potentially lost their lives over talking about this is like, I hate to make light of it, laughing about it in the podcast, because the reality is like, if that's true, which I have no reason to believe it's not, and a lot of people think that like that statement is true, that like people have a lot to lose if they do start spouting off about this topic. What do we do with that?
It's the thing is like the government always acts so fucking weird about this stuff, and it's so obvious, and they just keep like doing it, and they keep getting away with it, and no one in the fucking press asks any questions about it. And it's like, really, you're gonna let this go? Like each and every time something weird happens, and it's like you don't feel like there's a story there where like they say one thing, especially about the February shoot downs, but let's not get into that again for the millionth time. But it's just like so weird, and no one seems to think it's weird, at least no one with a platform, like a national or like global platform. And it's just us like screaming into the void, like, dude, what the fuck? Like, you're just gonna let this go? I don't know, man. It's just so weird to me. Like there's something there. There's a there, and there's like, all it's constant, But
Yeah, I'm
yeah,
still hopeful though, because I know that even if like this upcoming stuff does get squashed, I still am excited for Elizondo's book. I think that's really going to shake shit up a lot.
yeah,
And I think there's a reason he's been so meticulous about this book's release, and like the interviews he's been able to do, and like the breadcrumbs he's been able to give. I think that all that shit is calculated, and whatever it says in this book, I think is really going to shake shit up. I know that a couple months ago we were talking about the Simon and Schuster book deal with that Scott Andrews guy.
yeah,
I think that's also going to shake shit up. The Barack Obama Netflix. I don't know if people are familiar with that, but my understanding is Barack Obama, after he like concluded this nature series that he finished on Netflix, he's doing some production where he's going to talk about the Betty and Barney Hill case.
yeah.
And I
Actually,
think
actually,
that's fucking outstanding. And I
yeah,
think that like people that are getting discouraged because these lick ass rat Congress people that are completely beholden to donors and special interests aren't doing their jobs, that they're surprised that these people aren't doing their jobs. It's like, well, newsflash, dude, that's like the system we have right now. But I don't want to get on a soapbox. I did want to make the point though that if people are discouraged, they shouldn't be that discouraged,
yeah,
because I keep saying, dude, I think there are good people out there that really care about this stuff getting the public's attention in the right way. And yeah, I'm curious to see all those pieces I just mentioned, like, and Tom DeLonge. This is a good segue into Tom DeLonge's movie, because that shit I think may be bigger than all of those things.
yeah. In case anyone hasn't seen it yet, there's a trailer for Tom DeLonge's new movie, UFO movie, obviously, and the latest trailer came out like last week, I think, and there's a bunch of Easter eggs in there. He said there would be about a year ago now. I think the first trailer came out then, but yeah, this new one has some pretty interesting stuff in there. There's a few papers from the CIA reading room that he actually, has the actual papers documents in the trailer. So I kind of went and looked those up, and they're actually pretty damn interesting. And I hadn't read them before, which is kind of surprising because I've gone through that fucking reading room a million times. But yeah, we'll go through a couple of those. And then there was also this other very interesting aspect where it had those kind of Charlie Kelly from Always Sunny, those maps where like there's strings tied to different pieces of paper and news clippings and all that shit. And then in the middle, it says the others, which is kind of what Tom has called, quote unquote aliens, for a lack of better word. I guess that's what his advisors call, non-human intelligence is the others. And so that's in the middle. And then on the top, what do you want to explain it? Because I don't have it in front of me.
Yeah. I have it pulled up. It's this like circle chart right in the center of this Charlie Kelly string. That's a perfect comparison.
Pepe Sylvia.
Pepe Sylvia. Okay. So this chart, it's like a circle within a circle. And on the outside of the circle, it says quantum mechanics and consciousness. And then inside the next circle, it has all these religions like Gnosticism, Christianity, Islam, Judaism, Hinduism, Zoroastrianism, Taoism. It has all of those listed. And then within that circle, it has the others in all caps. And on the top of the others in blue, it says angels, devas, asparas, and malak. And then underneath it in red, it says demons, archons, asuras, jinn. And I can't read what the other one says because I'm blind. but
I think we get
essentially, yeah, essentially, all of these, and I'm no history major, but I know that a lot of, or if not all of these religions are relatively new as far as like the Abrahamic religions go. Zoroastrianism, I know Zoroaster lived at like 500 BC or so. Christianity is relatively new in terms of like the past like few thousands of years. Gnosticism. I feel like I sound like fucking Ben Stein explaining all these religions. But listen, people, the point is that there's a fucking proxy war going on.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So there's there's a post-it note next to it that says proxy war. Fuck, I don't have it in front of me. What does it say?
Yeah, I don't even see that sticky note, dude. I think mine is zoomed in too much. Dude, this trailer was fucking crazy. When Klaus sent me, he was like, "Hey, dude, this trailer came out." I was like, "Oh, sweet!" And I clicked it, and then for the next like 45 minutes, I was just sweating and just like taking. I was pressing like pause, play, pause, play, pause,
Yeah,
play. And I
dude,
was screenshotting because it's like the fucking. It's like all quick flashes of just random secret Tom DeLonge documents and like paintings. And I was like, every painting or like art piece I saw, I was trying to like look it up and see who the artist was and what year it was. And dude, they were all sick. It was so cool.
It says proxy war, battle for souls happening now. Yeah. So this is so this is kind of a Tom DeLonge classic. He talks about, he kind of actually went back and I think I found the first time he actually said this was during a Q&A session with Peter Levenda and AJ Hartley when he released the first Secret Machines book. And he basically said that he gathered all of these events that happened in history and he kind of split them out into two different things, or good and bad event, like, you know, positive and horrible events that happened in human history. And he sent them like to his advisors, and he was like, "Is this, the angels and demons of the Bible?" And his advisor was like, "Yes." And he said, so his reply was, "They don't really like each other, do they?" And the guy said, "Agreed." And then he said he got 2 words back, I guess a month later, and they were proxy war. So essentially, it's saying that there's multiple non-human intelligences on this planet, kind of using humanity in a sort of proxy war with each other. So that's a fun thing to think about when you're going to sleep. And and yeah, what's your theory on that? Because I know you think about that a lot and kind of game that out.
Dude, it's really tough to try to like parse all this and like still sound coherent. So like before I even start diving into this, people have to take a gigantic grain of salt and fucking
chop it up,
relax,
sniff it up your nose,
yeah, get it going, because like
take it to the dome.
This shit is crazy. Okay,
yeah.
So something cool about I think it's cool. One of the first books that I ever read about UFOs was by John Keel, and it was a book called Our Haunted Planet.
I just reread the first chapter of that today.
Dude,
and it's
the GOAT. It is the GOAT.
It makes so much fucking sense. It's kind of uncomfortable. But yeah, go on. Sorry, I just want I'm up to date on that. Yeah, I'm brushed up.
So I had never read anything about UFOs, and I was like, okay, well, I remember joining Twitter, and there was this one user who was like, I think Tom DeLonge followed him, ironically, or eventually he did, but it was that John Keel guy. His name's Corey, I think, and he's a super nice guy.
Yeah, he's a good dude.
And I would message that guy when I had a relatively like new Twitter account, and he would be like, always super responsive and encouraging me to read like a lot. He was like, don't take what I say, dude. Just like these people, these are some great researchers. And he named like a couple. He named Peter Levenda for sure. And John Keel was like one that I was just like, dang, dude, this guy's reading a lot of John Keel. And I just heard Tom DeLonge give an interview where he mentioned John Keel being like the shit, like he was being a very like important guy. And I was like, all right, well, I'm gonna check this dude out. I'll pick up this book because he kept posting like excerpts from this one book. And Keel, this is in like I think 1971, I think, that he published this book. He It's one of the most thorough books I've ever read about any topic, but just like in terms of like history, it Keel's take was that like he calls them ultraterrestrials because like we would just be terrestrial because we are earthbound and we can see each other with our senses and like we're humans, like of course. Extraterrestrial would imply that they come from outside of Earth. And Keel's idea was that like ultra terrestrial was a little bit different. Ultra terrestrial meant that it was existing within the super spectrum, which was like the totality of all we can like visibly see in the like electromagnetic light and ultrasonic like sound. He was saying that just because like things don't aren't visible to our senses don't mean that they don't exist within our reality. And there's plenty of things that our military equipment can pick up and that animals, namely dogs and like all sorts of different animals, I'm sure, can observe that we probably don't even understand exist. Here's an interesting part where he's talking about this exact topic we're talking about. Like, why are human beings so fucking unique? In the beginning, one superintelligence may have tried to utilize the Neanderthal men as his physical army. Ultraterrestrials were sent down the frequency scale to help guide the cavemen. To facilitate communication between the UTs and the Neanderthal men, the tall, blonde, normally sexless ultraterrestrials were made to more closely resemble their primitive contacts. They were given sexes, but were forbidden to participate in the pleasurable rites of sex, ... the tree of knowledge. The serpent people were sometimes able to control groups of cavemen and managed to trick some of the UTs into breaking their chastity. The UTs engaged in sexual intercourse with the cave women. This produced strange responses in their materialized nervous system. Emotions were born. Frequencies were changed. The direct control of the superintelligence was driven from their bodies. They were trapped on Earth, unable to ascend the electromagnetic scale and re-enter their etheric world. With the loss of control, they became animals, albeit highly intelligent animals. Since the UT's memories were part of the greater intelligence, the loss of contact also meant the complete loss of their former identity. They were locked on this planet, leaderless, in a totally strange and hostile environment. The first UTs to be thus trapped became the first real men. They had to learn to hunt and kill, to build fires and huts. They were lost, the victims of the first battle between the serpent people and the ultimate intelligence. Now, the serpent people or Omega group attacked man in various ways, trying to rid the planet of him, but the superintelligence was still able to look over man, and new, more tightly controlled UTs were sent to offer advice and assistance. Earliest man was told in carefully simplified ways of his origin and purpose. The superintelligence became God, and early man worshipped him, in many ways under many names. God worked out new ways of communication and control, always in conflict with the serpent people. Much is made of the fact that Adam and Eve were terrified by the first night, indicating that they were used to a world without light. Perhaps as ultraterrestrials, they were accustomed to total vision or perception of all the frequencies. Life on those higher planes would be bathed in continuous radiation, and there would be no night or day, no time, Now Adam and Eve were not only trapped on this miserable little planet, but they were also caught up in a world that moved in a single direction through the field of time. This would take some getting used to, even if they couldn't remember their previous existence as UTs. Through intercourse with the existing cave people, the fallen UTs produced new races of man. They were the missing link. And in many ways, all three of our hypotheses for the origin of man become correct. Evolution is involved, extraterrestrial descent is involved, creation is involved. In some parts of the world, the serpent people successfully posed as gods and imitated the techniques of the superintelligence. This led to the formation of pagan religions centered around human sacrifices. The conflict, so far as man himself was concerned, became one of religions and races. Whole civilizations based upon the worship of these false gods rose and fell in Asia, Africa, and South America. The battleground had been chosen, and the mode of conflict had been decided upon. The human race would supply the pawns. The mode of control was complicated as usual. Human beings were largely free of direct control. Each individual had to consciously commit himself to one of the opposing forces. After that commitment was made voluntarily, the chosen force could possess the individual to some degree. The UTs very carefully explained this process to the early priests who interpret it and tried to pass it on to their followers. The rites of baptism were born. The main battle was for what was to become known as the human soul. Once an individual had committed himself, he opened a door so that an indefinable something, probably an undetectable mass of intelligent energy, could actually enter his body and exercise some control over his subconscious mind. This soul was directly linked with the superintelligence and with all similar souls, thus making possible mental telepathy, prophetic dreams, and other wonders. In those thousands of cases in which this subconscious force lapsed over into the conscious mind, we find destructive fanaticism and obsession. If the controlling intelligence was omega or anti-human, the stricken individual suffers from insanity or commits criminal actions, social disorders, and so on. Fuck, dude. That was a lot to read. I hope I didn't sound bad when I was reading that.
No, it was good. Like
that's probably the most pertinent part of that book. And to me, because he talks about the soul, he talks about how he feels like human beings came to be through this term he keeps throwing around, ultraterrestrial, and he talks about there being this like pro-human and anti-human battle. And that's like the foundation of when I started reading about this topic was that, dude. That was the first book I read. And then after that, I was like, these books suck, dude. I want to go back. I read that book probably like 65 times because
that fucking literally Tom DeLonge is making a movie about it. Like that is literally what he's saying with this with this chart on the wall in his movie. It's a proxy war. It's goddamn, dude. I don't know. It's terrifying. Oh God. But yeah, that's John Keel. I mean, the fact that he wrote that shit in like 1971 is nuts. But it kind of does encapsulate everything, and it takes in religion, and it kind of explains everything in a really, I don't know. I don't necessarily believe it, but it's definitely, part of, like, that's the thing when you think about this stuff is, religion is like a huge part of the human psyche, influenced how we conduct ourselves on a day-to-day basis for most of humanity is these religions. And it's really only recently that it's kind of, the secular era, I guess, quote unquote, with I don't know. You know what I mean? It's like these.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. The idea of like the free thinking man and the individual and shit like that, that's very recent. Secular ideas, like what I'm not trying to like stand on a soapbox for our founding fathers and defend every action they've ever done, but like they're in terms of like the historical significance to humankind that the United States was, it is pretty damn impressive for what they were able to accomplish, because up until a very, very long time, it was ruled by the king, or it was ruled by fucking
false gods, right? That's
yeah,
what he's talking about.
bunch of pharaohs and fucking emperors and crazy bullshit.
Yeah.
And our shit wasn't perfect. Still is way far from perfect, but like the idea of having rights like 500 years ago, you could kiss that shit goodbye.
I'm really excited for this movie and shit. And that John Keel, man, that even that first chapter, I'm like, there's an ultra-terrestrial presence like living alongside us. And when we were more primitive. And yeah, it's wild that I think it was like even just yesterday they found like a wooden structure that was 500,000 years old. Like, what? Who built that shit? It's I don't know if you saw that, but 500,000 years old. Like,
oh my God.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where?
Let me pull it up real quick, because this is definitely worth talking about. All right, I found it. So yeah, the headline is CNN: extraordinary structure has no real parallel in the archaeological record. Archaeologists have unearthed the oldest known wooden structure, and it's almost 500,000 years old. The simple structure found along a riverbank in Zambia is made up of 2 interlocking logs with a notch deliberately crafted into the upper piece to allow them to fit together at right angles. This is 500,000 years old. Yeah, he said this. The professor of geography said the structure excavated upstream at Kalambo Falls near Zambia's border with Tanzania probably would have been part of a wooden platform used as a walkway to keep food or firewood dry, or perhaps as a base on which to build a dwelling. A digging stick and other wooden tools were found at the same site. That the wood has remained in place and intact for 500,000 years is extraordinary, and it gives us this real insight, this window into this time period. It's completely changed my view of what people were capable of at the time. Let me see what else. Isn't that fucking insane? 500,000 years old, like right angles carved out, like basically like Lincoln logs. Like,
that's exactly what I was picturing.
Yeah, dude. Oh my God, it literally says that.
It calls them Lincoln logs.
Diller compared the technique used to connect the structure's parts to Lincoln logs, the children's building toy made of miniature logs that lock together using square notches. Yeah, that's what makes us really confident that this is not a natural process. It has been done intentionally using stone tools. Researchers aren't certain which species of ancient human made the structure and wooden tools, but it is highly unlikely to have been our own. The earliest known Homo sapien fossils date from around 300,000 years ago. He said the complexity of the structure suggests that the people who made it were cognitively sophisticated and were able to make and execute a complex plan, something that likely required the use of language. 500,000 years ago.
And they think it was
and it's not us.
They think it was something like us.
I mean, I don't know. They have no fucking idea.
They said like, what did they said? Species of man, or a species of.
Yeah, researchers aren't certain which species of ancient human made the structure and wooden tools, but it is highly unlikely to have been our own.
Damn.
And they had language. It likely required language, the complexity, the cognitive complexity to put this thing together. So, what comes to mind? Homo naledi? Yeah, probably. I mean, not this specifically, but just the fact that like we had that. This is basically confirming that a non-human. Yeah, this is before, like some species had language before we did. What does that mean? That goes in, yeah, because I've written about Homo naledi a lot and how they, the evidence of them harnessing fire and using tools before we did was pretty remarkable. And that was like 250,000 years before us. But this fucking Lincoln log wooden structure was made 500,000 years ago, before we were even on the scene.
Dude, this is why I wish that I had like a scientist to like talk to, because like I don't understand what the question is. I feel like that would mean the evidence is suggesting we need to like maybe reevaluate our understanding of like what it means to be human. 500 these human beings are only 300,000, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like at the oldest. And that's
Yep.
being I think that some people have said like 100,000 was like the earliest Homo sapien. So like, dude, 500,000.
Yeah.
What the fuck was that?
And they had language 500,000 years ago.
What does it mean to have
So this-
language? Like, do any of our animals on Earth have language technically, or is it considered that like what's the criteria to mean that like your species has language?
I don't even know what to say about this, because it's so out there. It just throws a wrench into kind of everything we've been taught. And where do you go from here?
Dude, you already know what's next. Is they're gonna pull out fucking Poseidon's trident, and Joe Biden's gonna come out holding it. I'm just kidding, dude. I don't know what the fuck. I don't know, dude. I feel like because even when you talk about rising and falling, then people are like, oh, dude, well, that means Atlantis is real. And it's like, dude, I don't know if that necessarily is the case either. Like,
and that's the funny thing about
that shit might have been like a metaphor or something, but it's still different than the way, like modern science understands shit. Like, if they said that there actually was some advanced, like, or more advanced type of human predecessor, that shit would be crazy. Like, how would people respond? That, you talk about ontological shock,
and all these findings just like seem to line up with a much more complex history of our species, and it's going to make people really uncomfortable. And I don't know. I don't even know what to say about this. I just wanted to go over a couple other things in the Monsters of California trailer. There were some interesting government, like CIA documents he had in there, having to do with Starfish Prime is one of them. It was called, what was the paper called? Collateral Damage to Satellites from an EMP Attack. That like basically when the character goes in and he's like, he finds these documents basically that seem to be the catalyst for whatever adventure they have in the movie. It's this paper called Collateral Damage to Satellites from an EMP Attack, and it's like 100 200 pages long, and the whole first part of it is packed with data from Starfish Prime nuclear test. So I don't know if people don't know what that is. It's pretty much in, I think it was 1962, where we basically launched a nuke into space to see what would happen. And we learned a lot from it. It caused all this crazy shit to happen. And obviously it fucked up a lot of satellites. But within the UFO lore, like a big part of it was that we knocked down, something other than a satellite. Like a UFO, I guess is the inference there. But in another document that they have in that trailer, it's another Starfish Prime document, and within that document, they have someone's firsthand account of what happened when they launched that nuclear bomb, and they kind of start out telling that story, and then it starts getting interesting, and then for whatever reason the government decided to delete page 22 which is the next one. So I kind of wanted to read this and make a connection real quick, but this is from that actual government document. This is from DTIC.mil website. It's a firsthand account of someone in the military who basically describes what they see during Starfish Prime. Generally, the red mottled region was more intense on the eastern portions. Along the magnetic north-south line through the burst, a white-yellow streak extended and grew into the north from near zenith. So he's basically describing like what the blast looked like from the ground. Strong electromagnetic signals were observed from the burst, as were significant magnetic field disturbances and earth currents. A VLF signal, and then it goes page 22, deleted. So, so the whole next page is deleted. And then it basically talks about what was recovered. It wraps up basically in that deleted page. It looks like they were talking about, what fell from the atmosphere during the space. So after that deleted page, it goes, some samples, but the rocket-borne samplers were not recovered. Balloon-borne nuclear track emissions were not successful, possibly due to a freak temperature inversion, which prevented the balloons from reaching the altitude of greater than 50,000 feet. So essentially, they took out the whole page of what was recovered.
Oh yeah, dude. That harkens back to the old Jimmy Church, Tom DeLonge interview where he talks about fly swatting bugs out of the sky.
Exactly.
And it seems like a lot of these UFOs appear to be like operating at a different frequency, and that ELF or VLF, I think they would call it in this, is like for some reason it has like this effect on them that what is it? I think Lou Elizondo said something about this where he said it turns, when gravity becomes like part of the question, it turns into like a big sinker or something, or a big dumbbell brick. Yeah. And that made me laugh. And then also on that show Unidentified, there's that like conversation they have with that Italian commander Bruno Verdruccio, where he's explaining that incident they had where the thing was like lighting fires on this Italian coastline. Yeah. And that they said that they had like found what frequency it was operating on. And he said when they like shot a missile at it, that it shot it back at them. Yep. And that was lighting shit up.
Like couches were just lighting on fire in the fucking apartment.
Yeah, dude. Fuck Mexico. I want Italy's hearing and see what Italy rolls out, because that was interesting testimony. Was that Clark Bruno Verdruccio guy? They said he was like in the Italian equivalent to our Navy SEALs, and this guy was explaining how this thing came out of the water and like shot a beam at shot a ray. I don't know what
a helicopter.
Yeah, at a helicopter.
They actually had they had photos of it. Actually, it was on Unidentified. Lou Elizondo. They went to Italy and they showed him the photos.
God damn.
Yeah, it's wild. I actually found this is actually the connection I wanted to make to that document.
Gotcha.
So when it says, it ends like right before the deleted page, the sentence is a VLF signal, and then it ends. So this is what is in Secret Machines, and I feel like this might be connected. I feel like Tom like kind of filled in the blanks here. One of the CIA guys hands this analyst like a bunch of data from Starfish Prime, and is like, figure out what this is. And he's like, give me your gut sense. And the guy goes, it's going to take me hours to make sense of this. And the CIA goes, I need your gut impulse now. And the analyst is like, this is not possible. So the analyst goes, well, the first thing I see, said Babish, his defiance turning to baffled curiosity, is a correlation here between the British Jodrell Bank and the Goldstone Deep Space Communications radio telescopes, which seem to show a transmission originating outside our galaxy immediately after the Starfish Prime EMP. That's not relevant, said Scottoline. Babish stared at him. Did you hear what I just said? A transmission from deep space. Yes, said Scottoline, unblinking. We've known about that for years. Babish opened his mouth, but could think of nothing to say. Classified, remember, Scottoline said. Forget you ever saw that. So, that one page in the report and like basically cutting off at a VLF signal. It makes me wonder if like that's what Tom was talking about in Secret Machines when he's talking about a transmission from deep space.
One that I saw that was one of the art pieces that was in that trailer was this like winged like demon thing.
Yeah.
And I like did a reverse image search of like what it was and who the artist was. And it had to do with this German play about I think it's called Faust.
Oh, you did a reverse image search? That's fucking smart.
Are you mocking me?
No, I'm fucking serious.
Yeah, dude. A lot of those screenshots, some of them, I'm not gonna lie, I recognize the Michelangelo, the Torment of Saint Anthony. That's a pretty famous one, but he only shows like a little clippet of it. It is called Faust, and I was reading about what the fuck Mephistopheles was, and it's like this like German folklore about.
Sounds familiar. I have no fucking clue, but
it made me just like appreciate Tom DeLonge a little more, bro, because like it seemed like he had done his homework as to like how long a lot of this shit has been like in our art and in our like literature and in our culture. I feel like there's so much that is outside of just like biology and physics when it comes to this topic. And that's something that I really dug about this trailer, was that like it had so much art that like even just the couple of like paintings and plays that you got the Easter egg of, that's like really cool. And not every movie is doing that nowadays, especially nowadays. Like you don't,
everything's just a fucking like sequel or fucking reboot.
Yeah, dude, we're gonna remake fucking Lion King 5.
It's crazy. Like, it's almost, dude, it's like almost like a control system. We're just gonna keep you in this fucking loop of fucking narratives over forever. Like you're not getting out, no new content. And it's crazy how like money keeps us in this cycle of like whatever makes money you do. And it's just like, okay, the same thing makes money over and over again, but in different, like, different editions of whatever it is. I don't know.
Right. I know exactly what you're talking about, dude. It'll be like nobody wants to take risks about it's really difficult.
We're just spinning our wheels ideologically, and
we need to put all of the religious texts in the AI.
Yeah, man. Fucking seriously. Fucking seriously.
But the art aspect of that trailer I thought was really cool. Because one of the paintings also was Virgil and Dante. And we had talked about that a couple times between you and I. And I know Terrence McKenna would talk about Virgil and Dante a lot. And it was just real cool how like a lot of the things that we enjoy talking about end up like making their way into these topics that have nothing to do with UFOs, And it's just interesting because it seems like UFOs have a lot more to do with human beings than we're understanding. And when I watched that trailer, it kind of reaffirmed that a little bit. And that was something that was real big, like right off the cuff with John Keel, was that like he made it a point to say that like he thought that if there were no humans, there would be no UFOs.
Right.
And he made it a point that they were like part of us, like part of who we are. Maybe not necessarily part of us, but he said like if there were humans on another planet, I think that there would be UFO. They'd be seeing UFOs as well.
Yeah.
And that was such an interesting tie into all this. But like, I'm still learning a lot and reading a lot about this stuff, and I still don't know what they are. But it is interesting, the element that like consciousness and that like our existence in general has to do with their relationship with UFOs.
Yeah, man. I think that's probably a good place to wrap up. I got to eat again. every time we wrap up, I have to fucking eat. I'm just like dying. But yeah, man, I can't wait to see this fucking movie. And yeah, it's the NASA stuff is, I think it's a net positive, just in the general scheme of things, and when it comes to the legitimacy of the topic, as annoying as it can be. Man, I just put out an article that I wanted to talk about, but of course didn't get to it.
Do you want to, dude? We take 10 minutes.
Good. I'm good. I'm fucking hungry as hell.
No worries.
But yeah, it's out. It's called Recycling the Universe. It's about Roger Penrose has a theory about it's the cyclical universe, and then he kind of applies that to Fermi's paradox. So I kind of extrapolate that into certain things. Elizondo has said about DNA, and he has a theory in there about information panspermia, which is kind of transmitting potentially the genetic code into these things, through these crossovers of eons, and it's kind of a cyclical. I don't know, man. It's a lot. It's a lot to explain, but we'll definitely talk about it next week when we do an episode. But you got anything you wanna plug?
Not particularly. I just hope that everybody continues to stay vigilant and not get too married to any of these ideas we're talking about.
Yeah,
because like that's what makes it so satisfying when I talk to you about some of these topics, is that you're not telling me to join some group or that I need to look into this, bro. Look at it. Like, you're not really pushy about anything, or like hoping that this is going to pan out to be something. And that's something that I really like. It's a breath of fresh air in itself. And
well, dude, it's like, you could be wrong. You could look like a fucking idiot. Like, why would you go like, say something you don't? Like, just fucking wait, have patience, and wait till the data comes out, and then make a decision. Like, there's no reason to force yourself into believing something. I don't know.
Yeah,
that's how I look at it.
Yeah, dude, I just love you, bro. I think that too, I'm really proud of this show, and like I don't really have anything to plug now. I'm still trying to write and get a couple stuff sorted out, but like, dude, I just hope people when they listen to this show understand that like everything we talk about is not necessarily what I believe. It is at all. A lot of it is like just shit that like you really to try to understand concepts like non-human intelligence or ultraterrestrials. Like, these are very, very like exploratory ideas. So like it's a lot of fun to talk about them, and I just feel like it's like something that's really cool for people when they get to hear guys talking about it, and not in like a goofy way,
Yeah, it's also like non-human intelligence has been a huge part of like not American, fucking. Let me try that again.
It's like apple pie.
Yeah. Non-human intelligence is non-human intelligence it's been a big part of like, the human experience for a very long time. It's just called like gods. And it hasn't been looked at scientifically yet. And when you say it, you don't call people crazy for going to church every Sunday. And just because you're looking at this stuff through a scientific lens doesn't mean people should be called crazy for looking at it that way. It's actually, it's just part of the human experience, but we're actually kind of, trying to figure out what it means for our place in the universe through scientific method. And I think that makes a lot of people uncomfortable. But I think it's why it's got to be kind of taken on slowly. It's one thing to believe something, it's another to know it. So that's kind of how I see it. Yeah, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks, guys.